Welcome to TY BSc Chemistry class. I am Mr. Abhijit Bambre, working as Assistant Professor at Gokhale Education Society, Arts, Commerce and Science College, Jauhar. Again, welcome you. Today we are going to discuss overview of TY BSc Chemistry Applied Component Semester 5th, that is Drug and Dyes, course code USA CDD 501. In semester 5 there is 4 units. Out of 4 units, 2 units from drug chemistry, 2 units from dyestuff chemistry. Unit first, that is general introduction to drugs. Topic name itself says that is basic information about drugs or general information about drugs. What is drugs? Sources of drugs, requirement of an ideal drugs, means drugs should not have any toxicity, less harmful. Then classification of drugs based on therapeutic action. Next, nomenclature of drugs, that is generic name, then brand name, then chemical name or systematic name. Then next, definition of some medicinal term, that is pharmacon, what mean by the pharmacology, what mean by the pharmacophore, prodrugs, half-life efficiency, etc. Next, brief idea about some medicinal term, that is receptor, agonist, antagonist, drug potency, etc. etc. Next chapter, that is route of drug administration and dosage form. There is various route of drug administration, their advantage and disadvantage of drug administration, various dose form, example tablet, capsule, aerosol, etc. etc. Next, pharmacodynamic agent. In pharmacodynamic agent, there is a brief idea about pharmacodynamic agent, their structure, their chemical classes, uses and side effect. Next, CNS drugs. CNS drugs classify on the basis of pharmacological action. They are classified into CNS depressant, CNS stimulant, structure of CNS depression drugs, then structure of CNS stimulant drugs, their synthesis, their side effect. It's all about unit first. Then unit second, it also from drug chemistry. It contain analgesic drugs, antipyretic drugs, anti-inflammatory drugs. Analgesic and antipyretic drugs, their synthesis, side effect. An example of analgesic and antipyretic drugs. Next, anti-inflammatory drugs, their mechanism of inflammation, various inflammatory condition, their structure, what mean by the inflammation, then synthesis, their side effect. Next, antihistaminic drug. In antihistaminic drugs, what mean by the histamine, what mean by the antihistaminic drugs, their structure, synthesis and side effect of antihistaminic drugs. Next, cardiovascular drugs, classification on the basis of their pharmacological action, synthesis, then side effect of cardiovascular drugs. Next, anti-diabetic agent. In anti-diabetic agent, there is general idea about diabetes, what is diabetes, type of diabetes, then insulin therapy, brief idea about insulin therapy, which drug are used as anti-diabetic agent, their synthesis, their side effect. It's all about anti-diabetic agent. Next, anti-Parkinsonism drugs. In anti-Parkinsonism drugs, idea about Parkinsonism disease, which drug are used as anti-Parkinsonism drugs, their side effect. Next, drugs for respiratory system, general idea about expectorant, mucolant, bronchodilator, decongestant, anti-tissue, etc. And their example, which drug used for respiratory system, their synthesis, again their side effect. There is some example of drug used for respiratory system. There is list for reference book which are useful for us. It's all about 2 units, that is chemistry of drugs. Next 2 unit are from dyestuff chemistry or chemistry of dye. In unit 3rd, there is introduction of dye or dyestuff industry, what is dye, definition of dye, requirement of an good dye, then what mean by the chromophore, definition of chromophore, then oxochrome, their fastness properties. Next, natural and synthetic dye. There is natural and synthetic dye. In natural dye, definition of natural dye, example of well-known example of natural dye, that is henna, turmeric, saffron, indigo, etc., etc. It having some limitation. To overcome the limitation, day-to-day life we are use synthetic dye, which are easily available, cheaper than natural dye. Next, substrate for dye, type of fibers, that is natural fiber, as we know, wool, silk, cotton, their structure and name, then semi-synthetic dye, then synthetic dye, their structure and name, then what mean by the blended fabrics, definition and example. Then next, classification of dye based on their application, their basic operation involving in the dyeing process, that is preparation of fiber, next preparation of dye bath, then application of dye, then finishing. There are different method used for dyeing a cotton, that is direct dyeing, wet dyeing, modern dyeing and dispersed dyeing. There is another classification of dye and their example, that is acidic dye, basic dye, azoic dye, etc., etc. Then next, optical brightener, general idea about optical brightener, important characteristic of optical brightener, their classes. It's all about unit 3rd. Then next, unit 4th, that is color and chemical constitution of dye. In color and chemical constitution of dye, that is absorption of visible light, color of wavelength absorbed, what is complementary color, then relation between color and chemical constitution. The relation between color and chemical constitution are based on four theories, that is Armstrong theories, Witt theories, valence bond theories, then molecular orbital theories. In next chapter there is some unit processes, important unit processes and di-intermediate. Brief idea about unit processes, that is nitration, sulfonation, what is halogenation, what is diazotization process, etc, etc. Then next, preparation of intermediate, that is derivative of benzene, derivative of naphthalene, derivative of anthracene, and so on. It's all about 4 units, 2 units from drug chemistry, 2 units from dye-stuff chemistry. Think it, go through it. Thank you.